friends, welcome back to my channel. It's Tori. Today we are giving up control of my TBR, to the TBR game one last time in 2025. I don't even know if I remember how to do this, honestly, because it's been a couple of months since I did a TBR game video, and I'm really excited to be back. I'm a little nervous because, as you guys have seen in the past, this can go any possible way. So I'm hoping to get some of my TBR goal reads on the list for December. I do have a few books that I want to get in before the end of the year, but at the end of the day, the cards will do what the cards do, so we'll just see what happens. So if you've never watched me play this game, it's pretty simple. I draw a large location card that gives me kind of an overall goal for my TBR for the month, and then I draw a number of cards, prompt cards from this deck that are going to lead me to choose different books for the month I am going to be reading. I can choose as many cards as I want, and that usually correlates with how many books I feel like I'm interested in reading during the month, whether that's 4 books, 6 books, 8 books, whatever it might be. Usually I land around 5. And the cards have a lot of different effects that can kind of mess me up along the way. So if you want to go back and watch my earlier TBR game videos, I will link the playlist of those down in the description box below, and I think it's up in the cards here too. So with no further ado, let's see what we're going to be reading in December. All right, the first thing we're going to do is draw a location card. So I am going to keep these over here and just kind of shuffle them up a little bit to get our overall TBR goal with Ancient Library. At the end of the round, add 1 classic to your TBR. This does not replace any of your character effects. So this is going to be an extra book added to the TBR, which is actually fine because there is a classic in mind that I've been really wanting to finish before the end of 2025. So this actually works perfectly, and I'm a little nervous that we're starting off on such a good note because that doesn't always last through the rest of the game. So we're going to set that aside right now because the book that I have in mind may come up outside of that, and if it does, then we'll figure out a different classic. All right, so I think we're gonna go back to the 5 cards. I think that usually ends up feeling like a good number, because that way, if I feel like reading some extra books, I have a little wiggle room outside of the official TBR. And I also want to start finishing up some of these collections. So the first card for December of 2025, let me put the deck down before I drop it all over the floor, is Mongo from Dungeon Crawler Carl. Copy another character's effect. Okay, so I can't actually use this card yet because I need to draw another card and see what other effects I have to work with. So I'm going to put Mongo off to the side, and we're going to come back to him and choose a book with him later on. But that makes me very excited because if I get a card that is a really good fit for what I want to read in December, that means that I'll be able to copy it with Mongo. So that's fantastic. All right, so for those of you that don't know, I've read a couple of the Dungeon Crawler Carl books, and Mongo is like my favorite. I love him so much. He's a little chaotic barbarian, and I love that about him. The second card for our TBR, I'm going to put this down again. Lord Vetinari from the City Watch collection. So Lord Vetinari's effect is to draw a historical fiction and a priority read. Choose one and return the other. So I don't actually have a historical fiction jar, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look on my shelf, pick one out, and then I'll draw a priority read and see which one I want to read more. Well, the cool part about this is that I have a historical fiction on my priority list, so we might cheat a little bit. And I'm going to pull Lady Tan's Circle of Women by Lisa C., one of my favorite historical fiction authors. This is one that's been on my priority reads for 2025, and I haven't gotten to it yet. It's pretty short, so I don't feel like it's going to be a massive addition to any other TBR picks that I might have. So that's going to be option 1. And then we are going to dig into the priority reads and see what we get. Watch me draw Lady Tan's Circle of Women. Oop, I got 2, so I'm going to go with this one. All right, let's see. You guys, I am not even kidding. Okay, well, we're going to put that one aside because I already pulled that for my historical fiction. We could just leave it in there and say that that solidifies my pick, but I think just for the sake of argument, we are going to pull another priority read. Flames of Mira. Flames of Mira. Where did I put that? It's right here. Flames of Mira is on my 2026 priority reads as well as my 2025 priority reads. Man, I don't know, honestly, which of these two... I'm actually, you know, now that I've drawn it twice and now that I'm thinking about it, I think I am actually going to leave Lady Tan's Circle of Women, because this one is also on my 2026 priority reads and I was planning on reading it in the first month of the year anyways. This one I don't know will get read as soon if I put it back on the shelf now. So I think our first TBR pick is going to be Lady Tan's Circle of Women by Lisa C. All right, guys, we are now going to draw the third card out of 5. I may do 6. That might be a tad ambitious. Maybe I shouldn't do 6. It'll be fine. Okay. Maybe I'm gonna do 6. Oh my goodness, I drew the death card, you guys. I was thinking, you know, this is going too well. It's going too well. Effect is choose one character card in play, return it and the death card to the deck, draw 2 new character cards. If there are no character cards left to draw, remove death from play. Well, that means I have to either get rid of Lord Vetinari, which I've already picked a book for, or Mongo, which allows me to copy another character's effect, and I really like that effect. But I also really want to read Lady Tan's Circle of Women, and I feel like she worked so hard to be here. You know, like, what is the chance that I draw her out of my priority reads after already picking it off the shelf? Guys, I don't know what to do. Who made this game? I feel like I ask myself that every single time. I'm gonna regret either one of these decisions, honestly. This is where you guys are gonna get to see the extent of my analysis paralysis problem. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Okay, we're gonna send Mongo back into the deck. Ah! This is a mistake, I can tell. But it's done now. We're gonna take steps forward. One giant leap for mankind. And we're going to deal with the consequences of our actions. I didn't feel like I could betray Lisa C like that, you know, after she worked so hard. It's just not fair. So 2 cards, so the top 2. Okay, so the first one we have, which will be our now second draw, is Quick Ben. Draw 12 books from the fantasy jar, choose one and return the others. I love how nerdy, like if you guys have read the books that these characters are from, I hope you appreciate how nerdy these effects are. Okay. All right. So we need to holy freaking buckets, you guys. This is insane. Okay, never mind. I'm done. We're gonna start drawing. I need to draw 12 books and pick one. 12 fantasy books, you guys. That's insane. Why would I do that to myself? All right, guys, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna draw 12 of these and then show you guys the stack of what was chosen, and we'll talk about the picks from there because I don't wanna waste your day like that. Guys, you will never guess what happened. As I was gathering these books, I bumped the camera and it tipped over and it was fine, but it was a little blurry. So I turned the camera off and I turned the camera back on and continued filming the second half of my TBR game. And as I got to the end and I turned the camera off, or I thought I stopped recording, the camera made its really happy "I'm recording now" sound, and I realized that I had just done 20 minutes of TBR game that wasn't recorded. And I wasn't really sure what to do because there's nothing more disheartening as a content creator than when like you realize the audio didn't come through on your camera or that you didn't push the record button. So here's what we're gonna do, because I really liked the TBR that I ended up with at the end of this video. So I'm gonna kind of walk you through what happened, and we're gonna go on a little journey together, and I hope that you can give me a little grace because it happens to everyone, at least at some point. And unfortunately, it happened to me today in the middle of a TBR game. So the first thing we're gonna look at is the giant stack of books that I pulled with the Quick Ben effect. This is a ridiculous prompt, you guys, first of all. But we had 2 R.A. Salvatore books, Homeland, which is one of the first Drizzt books, and The Thousand Orcs. This one I put down right away because I knew that it was one I didn't want to read until I'd read other Drizzt books, and I didn't want this to be my intro to R.A. Salvatore's work. And Homeland was one that I just didn't feel like fit the kind of mood that I'm going to be in December, so both of these two were set aside. Then we had Sargasso of Space by Andre Norton. This one I decided against simply because I've been told that it's not a great spot to start with Andre Norton's sci-fi, so I think I'm going to hang on to this and try something else of hers to begin with. Then we had Small Gods by Terry Pratchett. And of course, this one is one that I'm very excited to read, but the first quote-unquote standalone that I want to read from the Discworld is actually Going Postal, and that is quite possibly going to be getting read in January. So this one I was okay setting aside in favor of reading Going Postal in the next month or two. Then we had Elder Race by Adrian Tchaikovsky, and this one I do really want to read, and as you can see, it's a very short novella. I've heard amazing things about it. And this one was a pretty strong contender for me when I was trying to figure out which one of these books to get on the TBR, but I did end up saying no to that one as well. Then we had A Sea of Souls by N.C. Scrimgeour, which I am pumped to read in 2026. This ended up on my 2026 priority reads list. So this one is going to go back on the shelf because I know it's going to get read early in 2026. Then we had Juliette Marillier's Son of the Shadows, which is book 2 in her Seven Waters series after Daughter of the Forest. Again, a series that I'm really excited to continue, but it just wasn't the right timing. Then we drew another Juliette Marillier book, The Harp of Kings, which I actually did start a little while ago and was kind of taste testing. Really enjoyed it. However, I was told by a couple of longtime Marillier fans that this is a good book to read after a couple of her other books because there's going to be some Easter eggs in here that I will get a lot more out of if I've read her other work first. Which then led us to one of my most anticipated reads of the next few months, and that is Dread Knight by Andrew D. Meredith. This is book 4 in his Collation saga, which I've been absolutely loving the last couple of years, and this would catch me up on the series with what's out so far, which is very exciting, and I'm even more pumped for it because I think it's going to go a little bit darker than the other 3 books, which, as you guys know, makes me even more excited to read it. And I can't wait to get back to these characters. I really kind of solidified my love for them in book 3 and my investment in what's going on and their journeys, that I'm very excited to read this. However, with reading Midnight Tides in December, I just feel like I want to be able to give this one the space it deserves, and I might have to wait until January to do that. Next up was The Legend of Eli Mompress, which this is actually an omnibus edition with the first 3 books. And my husband Ben and I are already 100 pages into the first book. We're listening to the audio, which is really good. And this is just a fun, like, anti-hero classic fantasy romp. And one of the things that's really neat about it is Rachel Aaron is doing some interesting things with the magic system, which I'm enjoying immensely. So this one I'm already reading, and book 2, these aren't very long. Book 2 is probably something my husband and I are going to listen to on audiobook as we are going down to Utah to do Dragonsteel Nexus, the convention, in the next couple of weeks. So this one was a pretty tempting offer because I knew we were going to be reading it already in the car. And last but not least was The Forgetting Moon by Brian Lee Durfee, which is a trilogy I have had on my shelves for 4 or 5 years now, probably at least 4. And I do really want to read this. I really enjoyed the prologue when I taste tested it a little while ago, but I don't know that I have it in me to jump into another really, really thick fantasy book in December. That's usually a part of the year where I'm starting to wind down a little bit, right before the fresh new start of January, and I just didn't feel like this was a good fit for my TBR in December. So looking at all of those, I ended up picking The Legend of Eli Mompress for the Quick Ben prompt, and that was going to be added to my TBR alongside Lady Tan Circle of Women. My third draw from the deck was Galdo Sansa, which gives me the effect of drawing a priority read. The secondary effect is that if it's drawn with Kalo Sansa, who is Galdo's twin, effect changes to pick a mood read. Now honestly, either one of these is phenomenal because I really want to get through a few more of my priority reads from this year by the end of 2025, and Galdo came through and allowed me to do that. So I drew from the pile, and we ended up with The Thousand Cranes by Yasunari Kawabata, which honestly, I probably would not have picked up this year unless I had drawn it. I had completely forgotten about it, even though it is literally there in the little set of covers in my bullet journal of priority reads. I'm really excited about this one, you guys, because this is the story of a young woman who is invited to a tea ceremony from her family's rival, like the mistress of her family's rival family. If that made any sense. And again, you guys know I've been loving my translated Japanese fiction the last couple of years, and I cannot wait to try this because I think it's going to be the perfect, shorter, different in tone read that I'm going to want in December. And even cooler, the person who owned it before me annotated a bunch of things in the book, which I actually really like because it's almost like there's a story within the story, and it's fun to see what the other person found interesting, what notes they might have taken during the story. I just think that's really cool. So I'm very excited about that one, and that was my Galdo Sansa pick. My next draw from the deck was Ait Madashi, which freaked me out so badly at the beginning because she is a disruptor. She is from my Villains and Anti-Heroes set, and it is her job to bother my TBR. However, she actually came through for me and made things a little bit easier. She allowed me to draw another priority read. Her secondary effect is that if I draw a No Peak Clan character at the same time, I have to shuffle it back in the deck and draw a replacement card. So if there's a Greenbone Saga character that gets drawn with Ait Madashi, I can't use that card and I have to put it back in the deck. But the priority read that I drew with Ait Madashi was In the Orbit of Sirens, which made me so excited because this was on the top of my priorities for the rest of the year. This is a sci-fi by T.A. Bruno, and I anticipate binging this book, if I'm being totally honest. I'm so excited to read this. One of the things that I think T.A. Bruno does a phenomenal job with is his visual portrayal of the environment that he's in, of the alien creatures he's designing, and you can really see his experience with animation and filmmaking come through in his novels. And I've heard really good things about this one, so I'm very excited to finally get to it and start this trilogy of what I'm hoping will be fantastic sci-fi books. So all in all, Ait Madashi actually came through for me, and she was pretty nice to me, which did freak me out just a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. However, as you will see, another card more than made up for it. The next card that I drew from the deck was Dane, who is another disruptor card, and he is from the Collation Saga by Andrew D. Meredith. And this is potentially one of the most hated characters in indie fantasy. Like, people talk about him all the time. If people have read the Collation Saga, you will hear about how much people cannot stand Dane because he is just such an infuriating, well-written, but infuriating character. And Dane's effect is that I have to read a book by a male author. No big deal, right? I have tons of books on my priority wish list that are written by male authors. However, Dane's secondary effect is that at the end of the round, I have to choose a TBR read written by a female author and replace it with a book written by a male author. But I was happy enough to pick for Dane's regular effect, A Death in Tokyo by Keigo Higashino. Higashino is a murder mystery and thriller writer that I've been absolutely loving this year, and this is the third out of the 4 available translated books of his Detective Kaga series. And I'm really excited to read this. And again, I think it's shaping up to be a really varied TBR for December, which is what I wanted. I wanted a lot of different tones and styles and types of stories to finish out the year, and I am so excited that this one made it onto the list. However, Dane's secondary effect meant that I had to remove one of these two books from my TBR and replace it with a book written by a male author. I really didn't feel right putting Lisa C. back on the shelf because she worked so hard to be here. She fought for the spot on this TBR, and I really want to read this book, so I didn't feel like I could take that off, which left Rachel Aaron's The Legend of Eli Monpress. Now, the one positive to this is that I feel like this is going to get read either way, because my husband and I have literally 19 hours in the car both ways down to Utah in the beginning of December, so we are going to have some great audiobook time, which I'm really looking forward to. And Eli Monpress is something we're both really enjoying right now, so just because I won't be earning a card for Eli Monpress, I will still be reading Rachel Aaron's work in December and enjoying it on the ride down to Utah. However, that meant that I did have to replace Quick Ben's card, which I went through all that work for, with a book written by a male author because The Legend of Eli Monpress didn't count anymore. So I brought in Midnight Tides by Steven Erikson. This is probably my highest priority read for the end of the year, and I'm really excited. I started the first 5 pages last night, but in a book like Malazan, 5 pages is nothing, so we're counting it. And it is kind of ironic and sweet to be earning the Quick Ben card for Midnight Tides anyway. So I'm not mad about it, and it's a book that I was already planning on reading. So all in all, I think we thwarted Dane's ability about as well as we could have, considering everything. And I'm really excited to get through Midnight Tides. And I read the prologue, the first 5 pages last night, and I already am just like in love with the story that's being set up here. And I know that there's just a lot even better to come. Now, we can't forget about our location card that we drew at the beginning of the TBR game, which was Ancient Library, and I needed to pick a classic novel to add to my TBR at the end of the round. And that made me really excited because the classic that I had in mind right away on my priority list was Cannery Row by John Steinbeck. And it's actually really cool that I'm reading this in the same month as Midnight Tides, because Steven Erikson is the person that recommended that I read Cannery Row specifically. So that just is kind of a cool tie-in. This is a book that I have been told will really teach me a lot about atmosphere and description, which I'm very excited about. And it's short, it's gonna be hopefully a pretty quick read, and it's another classic that's been on my bucket list for a while, ever since I heard Erikson talking about it. So I'm very excited that this one was an easy addition to the TBR. So, our final TBR for December sans a couple of other things that I will be reading, like Eli Monpress, and Ben and I will also be finishing Snuff by Terry Pratchett to finish out the Discworld City Watch series, which I'm very excited about. But our official TBR game TBR for December is Cannery Row by John Steinbeck. We have Thousand Cranes by Yasunari Kawabata. We have A Death in Tokyo by Keigo Higashino. We have In the Orbit of Sirens by T.A. Bruno. We have Midnight Tides by Steven Erikson. And we have Lady Tan's Circle of Women by Lisa C. And I cannot tell you how excited I am about this TBR, if I'm being totally honest. And that is one of the reasons why I seriously considered redoing the second half of the TBR game completely, because I do want to give you guys my initial reactions, and I'm so bummed that you missed out on all of those, but I just was so happy with what the TBR looked like for December that I just didn't feel like doing it all over again. So I hope you'll forgive that, and I hope it was still fun to see what cards were being pulled and what books ended up on my TBR for December. I hope that you guys have a phenomenal month of reading in December. I would love to know down in the comments, what kind of mood do you typically go for at the end of the year? Are there any specific reads that you're looking forward to, or things that you come back to every year? Let me know down in the comments. If you like my content, please leave a like on the video and consider subscribing if you haven't already, because I would love for you to spend more time on my little corner of the internet. I hope you guys are reading some 5-star reads, having a fantastic week, and I will see you in the next video.